Otio, Eli Chalugi, Sadanela, Ognali, Eli Nagida, Chemasu Ugidali Unega, Chechikamagi, Anigidua, Eli Osahi, Chalugi. Hello. I said hello and welcome to all my relations, all my friends, and everyone else that is listening tonight. I am Mashu Whitefeather. I am Chickamauga, Anigidua Cherokee, and Osahi. I am your host for this evening, and before I introduce my guest host tonight, I would like to acknowledge that the song you heard in the beginning of the program, it was done by Bo Taylor from Cherokee, North Carolina, and it's from his album, Rebuilding the Fire, and that song was a greeting or a welcoming song. Also, before we get started, I would like to give you our call-in number, should anyone like to call in during our program, and that number is area code 718-506-1564. Again, that's area code 718-506-1564. And you can also reach us if you would like to come to the website, and that is Just Us Radio Network, and you can leave messages and comments there, and our man behind the scenes, Chimney Bennett, also Cherokee, will be able to take your call and let us know or look at your message. Doreen Bennett, who is my regular co-host, is not with us tonight. She is at a conference, and so I have as my guest host tonight my cousin, Charles Twodog, who is also Cherokee and living in Kentucky. Osio Twodog.
Osio Dohichu.
Thank you for coming on and helping us with the show tonight. We really appreciate that.
My pleasure, my honor, brother. You're doing, you guys are doing awesome, and it's my pleasure to be in with you.
Okay. Our guest tonight is supposed to be Roberto Borrero, and I think he is just now joining us. Roberto, are you here? I don't think you... Are you here, Roberto?
Yes, a little bit of a bad connection, but I'm here.
Oh, thank you. I'm just announcing you, so good timing. That Taino blood is working for you. Roberto is Taino.
I hope I can keep the connection.
Okay, well, we'll just work with it. How does that sound? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
We hear you fine, Roberto.
Roberto, my guest host tonight is my cousin Charles Twodog. Doreen wasn't able to come on tonight because she's in a conference back in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I was just getting ready to tell people about you, so why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself. He's been a guest of ours before, and a very good guest. Are you hearing me okay? Roberto?
Roberto, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here, but it's breaking up a bit.
Why don't you try calling in, Roberto? And that way you'll get a good, clear signal.
Roberto, could you call in our number on your phone?
That's what he's going to do. He's going to call in on there, and then I'll bring him right in.
Okay.
All right, because it's breaking up real bad on his end, and it's dropping the quality.
Okay. Well, until Roberto joins us by phone, Roberto is Taíno Indian, which is a Caribbean tribe, and also it goes not only through the Caribbean but up into Florida. And I met Roberto last May when we were all at the United Nations for the Indigenous Peoples Permanent Forum. and he is very active with different projects in the UN and also the Taino people. I know that he has also done some acting, so he is an actor, and he's very good with working on political rights and issues for indigenous peoples all over the world. So
very good.
So that's a little bit of what I know about him, but I'm sure he'll be able to tell you more about himself when we make the connection.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I was just giving them a little bit of your background, but I know I've left a lot of things out. I built you up to look real good, Roberto, so why don't you fill in the blanks?
Thank you so much. I always appreciate it.
Real quick, Roberto, is this your number, 917, the area code?
Yes, it is. That's my cell phone.
Okay, and you've called into the show?
Yes, I called in and pressed the button number 1.
Because I've already got you unmuted on your cell phone, so I'm going to go ahead and log you out of Skype. That way you won't be echoing, because you're already unmuted on your cell phone and able to talk. Okay?
Okay, are you still with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Yes.
So as I was saying, why don't you give just a little bit of a background on yourself to add to what I've said, let the people know a little more about you.
Okay, well, my name is Roberto Borrero, and I'm a Taíno Indian from the island of Boriquén, which people today know as Puerto Rico. I'm a community leader. In my community, I'm known as a cacique, and basically that means I have some level of responsibility amongst the people. And I also work with the International Indian Treaty Council. I work as the UN Programs Director, and I follow any kind of meetings, conferences, anywhere where indigenous peoples are relevant, and I will advocate for and indigenous peoples as best I can, and not only just from the Americas, but from around the world as well.
Mm. That's good.
Also a cultural ambassador, I guess you could say. I do some artwork. I do traditional song. I've done dance, led dance troops, cultural troops. Been in a few, as you said, documentaries, and as a advisor, consultant, and appeared on some film in that way, and just basically try to promote my culture the best I can.
Very good. I do the same thing as you do as far as promoting the culture, but not in all the avenues that you've been blessed to be able to do it with, and that's great. We need more people like that to do it in a positive way. And I was telling the people that I met you last May when we were at the UN for the Indigenous Peoples Permanent Forum, and that's where I really, got to meet you and talk to you and kind of learn about you. And you have been, well, you live in New York area, but you've been just coming from a meeting there, I think?
Yeah, well, we've been participating in a few meetings, and I'm sorry if I'm stopping when I'm talking.
Okay.
But it seems like there's an echo, and I can't figure out why.
It's because you're still turned on to Skype and you have your phone going at the same time. So if you want to turn off your Skype, we can still hear you on the phone.
Okay, let me try that.
Yeah, that should cut out the echo. Is that better? I don't know, but we may have lost him. But
possibility.
Yes, he's a very diligent worker and championing indigenous rights and issues for not only indigenous people from Turtle Island here, but from all over the world. And that's really a wonderful opportunity for all of our indigenous peoples from around the world to get together, to work together on these issues, and actually have a voice in what's going on. And I personally think it's a good thing that our people are approaching the government and making sure that our rights and our issues are being heard.
As it should be.
Yes, it should be, and that we actually have a voice in today's world. And this has done a lot for our people as far as indigenous rights go, and acknowledging us as human beings. One of the things that I noticed that actually started there at the UN and is now accepted internationally is our United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, where our rights are being recognized. And I'm sure he had a part in this. And I even noticed when I was in New Zealand, I saw the same Declaration of Indigenous Rights in Maori. So I know that they're in every country. And that's really a good thing, as a step in the right direction. And
definitely a blessing.
Yes, and I think as maybe a lot of people don't know, but the United Nations can't force any country to do anything. Only thing the United Nations can do is have the countries come together and the interested peoples, and they can make suggestions. Like up in the Kanakota, or what most people know as Canada, during the Idle No More movement, we had our special rapporteur from the United Nations come and make suggestions. And that's the only thing he can do, for the betterment of the indigenous peoples in Canada. And so he made those suggestions, and then it's up to the powers to be of that country or any country to listen to them or not. Are you back, Roberto?
I don't know. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are. You sound
great. We hear you fine, brother.
All right, great. Sorry about the little technical difficulty on my end.
Not a problem. Do you hear yourself echoing now?
I don't hear any echo, so that's great.
That's good Cherokee medicine working for you. You're welcome.
Wonderful. Love it.
So you were going to tell us a little bit about the last meeting that you were in, I guess?
Well, there's so many things going on right now. It's like all roads are culminating in September. And we just finished a part of that process recently with the Open Working Group on Sustainable Development. And this was just over a year process. If you think back to around 1992, they had a big conference in Rio de Janeiro called the Earth Summit. Some people might remember that. And during that time, the states were talking about the environment and how they needed to do something. And of course, here we are 20 years later. They just recently had a Rio +2. And out of that event, they of course needed more time to talk. It's always like the states need more and more time to talk about these things, to negotiate, to try to move things forward. And of course, when you're dealing with over 190 countries, and some are what they call developed countries, and others less developed and least developed, these agendas don't always match up about how people are looking to develop into the future. But I think there's an overall sense now that, that something needs to be done. I mean, I think people could really see, even though there's still some naysayers out there, that climate change, for example, is a reality. There's acidification in the oceans that needs to be dealt with, and because if the oceans collapse, the rest of the world goes with it not too long after. The same way that we talk about if bees disappear, it's not too long after that crops fail, and then again. So we're on the brink of all these things, and even the naysayers now, or their voices are getting a little bit smaller and smaller. So they're talking about ways that they can address some of these issues at the UN. And the Open Working Group on Sustainable Development was one of these ways that they were going to set their agenda, at least into the next 15 years, on sustainable development. So that's positive. I mean, not just talking about development or economic development or develop it based on a market system, but also to try to look at other ways to deal with the issues that we have around the world. We were mentioning our sister Doreen and folks indigenous peoples in the Pacific. Some folks are in a real danger of losing their homes because of climate change, because of the sea level rise. And so these are some of the things that they're talking about. And, it's our job, some of us who are based in New York and others who can make it at some times, to try to remind them as best that we can that, while they're talking about these development plans and ways to move into the future and the fate of the future generations, who better than indigenous peoples to be A, part of the program, and B, we have to make sure on our side that they don't forget us, right? So we have to be there and raise our voices and say, hey, don't forget, we're here. We're here to be partners. We're here to work on solutions together. So these are the type of things that we were working on at the Open Working Group. And the last meeting just took place last month. And, the states were just going back and forth on this final text, and indigenous peoples, the term, right? Because it's important that we appear in these documents that they're talking about, because afterwards we can use those documents to lobby, to say, hey, remember when you said this about indigenous peoples? Well, what have you done to really complete this, or what have you done to address this issue, et cetera? So, we have to make sure that we appear in these documents. And throughout this process, it was like an up and down game. First there was 2 mentions, and then 6 mentions, and then they take it away. Some states don't want to hear about us at all, and so it's a lot of lobbying back and forth. And the very last day, some of our folks, like our friend Ghazali, I know he was on your show recently. Some of our folks, Ghazali and Danica Littlechild, they pulled an all-nighter because the meeting just kept going on and on. We thought it would end at 9, so they let me go early. And then as I was heading back home, they're like, "Oh, we don't think we're going to get out of here till the morning." And they didn't. They didn't get out of there till about 1 in the afternoon the next day. So these were states going back and forth, going out of the room. They're not agreeing on text. And here we are trying to, again, make sure that we're in there somewhere. And so at the end of the day, the final document, we had about 2 mentions in there of indigenous peoples directly. But then there was also mention about the importance of culture and cultural diversity as another factor to take into consideration in development, sustainable development, and also another mention of traditional knowledge, the importance of traditional knowledge in this process as well. So there was some gains there, certainly not what we wanted, but imagine if we were not there at all for the next 15 years, we would not be a priority in that process. So congratulations to everybody who worked on that and who were there, Danica Ghazali, Galina Angarova from Teteva, and a host of others. So that's what's going on there. Now we're just gearing up for the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. I'm sure Ghazali mentioned and updated you with all you need to know there. And that's going to happen in September, but there'll be an informal consultation happening in August on the 18th and 19th. And then September, as I said, we'll be going into the World Conference. But also there's the Small Island Developing States meeting that will be happening in Samoa from the 1st to the 4th. And something else that I think your listeners would be very interested in connecting with somehow is the People's March on Climate Change. That same week that we'll be meeting for the World Conference, there'll be a huge march happening in New York City, and this is to draw attention to climate change from the grassroots perspective, and to try to make an impact on the world leaders who will be coming in to the Secretary General's special meeting on climate change. That'll be happening on the second day of the World Conference. Actually, the two meetings are not connected officially, but of course there's a lot of overlap, Indigenous peoples being on the front line of climate change in so many areas. So that's what's going on basically on my end. I'm working on all those issues and looking forward to sharing information and seeing a lot of people coming out on September 21st, that Sunday, to march along with us in New York for that People's Climate March.
I know I'm going to be there, and Carl is going to be there, and Hawkstorm is going to be there for the conference from the 20th to the 24th.
Well, I hope you guys can plug in somehow to that climate march, because it's going to really be a historic event. They're thinking that this will be the largest march on climate in history.
Now, is this going to be right in New York City?
Right in New York City, yeah.
Okay, the only thing that might inhibit us is that we're required to be there 3 days of meetings that we're required to be in. So I think it actually starts on the 21st, the meetings, and they want us there by the 20th.
Right. Well, that's the thing. So, but we can certainly spread the word to others and try to get them involved somehow. And I'd appreciate any help you could be with your listeners and
sure.
through your networks, just letting people know that this is going to be happening as well.
Very good. We're also looking at other conferences and things that are with the United Nations that we, through our NGO can get to. I know Doreen was talking about there's another United Nations conference in the Samoan Islands that she might possibly go to.
Yes, that's the Small Island Developing States Conference. This will be the third one. They started these conferences about 1994. The first one was in Barbados. And again, right now, Indigenous peoples are not really a priority in this, even though there's so many Indigenous peoples are affected by what's happening in small islands. And so we really need a lobby there as well. I'll be in Samoa, and there'll be a few other people there as well that we know, so that would be wonderful if our sister Doreen can make it and help us lobby there, because right now Indigenous peoples are not mentioned in their outcome documents, so we won't be a priority in that, and I think that would be a real shame, and we really need to work hard over the next coming weeks to make sure that we appear in that final document.
That would be great. I know she had talked about it. I'm not for sure where she is on that as far as getting her paperwork and stuff to go there, but I'll talk with her and let her know that you're planning on being there as well.
Thank you.
That's really good. I think I agree with you. I think it's important that our Indigenous peoples attend these conferences and the Permanent Peoples Forum and actually debate and go over things, and it's noted that we are there and that we are interested, because like you said, if it's documented, we have a bigger voice and our words are heeded to more so than if we're not. And I'm just learning this process that you're an old hand at, Roberto, because my first time at the UN was, when we met last May, and I was there primarily as an observer. And so I'm just getting into this at my stage of where I'm in life right now. And there's a whole different usage of terms in there, like you were talking about. For example, you all talk about states. This state is this and this state is that, and I'm thinking, are they talking about states in our country or what? There's a whole different meaning to some very common words.
Yeah, it's a whole UN speak, right? It's a whole other language almost, and it takes a little getting used to, but states, basically, when we say about states, we're talking about countries in the system, and governments, country governments that we would know as those who are surrounding us, oppressing us, or what have you. And this is why it's important, in my opinion, to get some kind of at least some kind of orientation before you even go to the UN. Get some idea of what's happening best way you can. There's some programs like the one that Doreen and Carl have been through, the Tribal Link Foundation's Project Access is one, and there's other training programs, and I think that helps out a lot. But you were mentioning being there and the importance. I agree with you, Mashu. It's they open up these doors, and it took us a while to get there and get in the building, And I remember being there in around 1992, 93, and 94 when the first International Year of the World's Indigenous Peoples was set, and I remember elders like Thomas Benyanka and others, some who've crossed over now, being there. Yeah, this is a long process from the 1970s, and all the activism and civil rights movement that was going around in the 70s, and folks even earlier, right? But all of this is a combination, and if we don't go there and we don't participate, these states or these governments, these country governments are going to say, well, we invited them and they weren't there, so we're just going to move ahead and do what we want. I mean, at the end of the day, we see they do what they want anyway, but at least that we can bring it up and say that while we were there, we did either agree with this or not agree with this, or offer alternatives, and this is what our people want from our perspective, and this way they can't say that we didn't participate, or they offered an avenue for participation and we refused to take it. I think that would be a little irresponsible on our end. We have to be there. We have to continue to demand the at least the minimum of dignity and the respect for our rights. As we have to be there and demand that at every opportunity, and that's the way I see it. It's not that the UN is the silver bullet that's going to solve all of our problems, but it's just another avenue. It's just another place. We have to do this, as you know, at the local level, right, in our own towns and amongst our own people. We have to take it to the national level and fight the national government and remind them. But then sometimes, the national level doesn't respond, so we have to take it to the international and hopefully apply pressure that will make movement in a positive way for our folks. So, as Indigenous peoples, we have to be here for the long haul, and we have to have folks who can do the local, who can do the national, and who can do the international. And, keep training others so that they can take up these positions as well. I've seen too many folks who kind of get stuck in their role, and many years go by, and you wonder, well, who's going to take over, when they can't do it anymore? And so those are things that we also have to think about as well.
Well, I think we both know that, I think our people have tried to be represented even up to the national level, and we have a history of not doing well at the national level. And, as far as the government's really paying attention, and but with the international level, I think we have an added chance to be heard because there's the world opinion, you know, and you have people from all over the world here, you know, that are coming together, and to me that the experience last May was just awesome because I had never been around that many indigenous people from that many places in the world, and it's like it was euphoria to me, you know. It's like, can you imagine what all of us together could accomplish, you know? And
I agree. I agree.
And let me tell you, it was one of the best experiences of my life, and this is why I want to continue in this vein. And you were talking earlier about who's going to take the place of the people that have been in there for such a long time and have, you know, been doing the work for us. There was one young man that I remember. I can't remember. I think his name is Daniel. I'm not for sure. He was a young man from up in New York, I think. And he ended up speaking. And he was an Indigenous American, and I was very impressed with that young man. And then there was a young girl from Canada, from the Northwest Fishing tribes up there.
Oh, yeah.
And she was excellent. And I think, matter of fact, she had done a presentation with you and Orville Luckinghorse.
Yes, Takaya Blaney.
Yes, Takaya. I couldn't think of her name, and I met her parents. Excellent speaker for her people, and she's only like 9 or 10 years old.
Well, she's actually, I think she just turned 13. But
my goodness.
She's amazing, you know. She is amazing, and she's done so much already. And it's just, you know, seeing that, Mashu, is like, it brings so much joy to me and gives me that extra oomph, right, to go on. Because sometimes you deal in these arenas, and boy, it could really drain you, you know, spiritually and physically. And you know, you work, you do this stuff, and you know, here with, for example, I was talking about that open working group, you know, more than a year's worth of work, and at the end of the day, you know, we're only mentioned twice in the document, you know, and at some level, you know, we could feel a little discouraged about that, but at another level, we could say, well, imagine if we weren't there, we might not have appeared in it at all, you know. Exactly. So, you know, at some point, you wonder, you know, if what you're doing is what you need to be doing, is it making an impact anywhere? But as you say, the other important aspect of this work is not just being there to remind states and to demand that they respect our rights, but also to renew these ancestral ties that perhaps were severed with the coming of you know, these state countries and these new emerging governments that emerged all around their peoples and throughout the Americas and beyond, right? And
what's called, you know, colonization.
Yes, colonization. You know, that globalization stuff's happening, right? 500 years ago for us. But you know, being around so many indigenous people, seeing that there's others who are also going through this, and you know, where we see that there is some hope or some, you know, maybe we can learn from each other and see what's working somewhere, or even add some support to some people's struggles who are maybe even more dire than our own. You know, just when we think that, boy, it's so bad for us, then we hear these stories about things going on in other people's territories, and you know, you're still talking about loss of lives and brutality and in the strictest form, you know, and you know, actual horrific stories that are going on, and you know, it kind of snaps you back into reality. So, you know, it could be worse for us, you know, and we need to help these folks, you know, and we need to be supportive, and in the same way they need us too, in that way, for that moral support, that spiritual support, that reconnection, that lifts people's spirits and gives them that much more energy to live and fight another day, you know.
And I agree with you 100%.
I totally agree.
I was keeping up with Ghazali, during his all-nighters at the last meeting, and I don't think people realize the hard work that goes in. I mean, people can read the headlines, and say this is going on at the UN and this is what's being whatever, if it even makes the news in mainstream media. But the people that are there are really dedicated to what they're doing, and it's for the betterment, in our case, for our indigenous peoples. And I mean, like there's not a whole lot of people that would take that time and stay up all night and then get up with only 2 or 3 hours sleep and go on and do another whole day and stuff like this, and I really have to hand it to those people. And you were also talking about the people that have been at it for a while, and the name that comes to me right now is Kenneth Deere.
Oh yeah.
And I know he was the one, because he told me, he says I'm the one that approved you to come to this, so we always joked around about that with him. And he said he was retiring from that, but I noticed he was sitting in on some conferences on stuff I had seen on Facebook. So I mean, he's still active in the UN and still doing things, isn't he?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, he's a person who's been there for quite a long time, and we really owe him a lot. He's a good friend, and he has a good perspective on things because he's been attending these meetings for such a long time. And he's one story. There's many folks who were there, for example, at that 1977 meeting that really launched this whole movement within the UN, where we actually had places to speak. Before that, there really was none. And just last year, they just held a meeting with some of the folks who attended that 1977 meeting. Some of the folks who are still around, who are still with us. We're still fortunate to have them. And it's just amazing, and I feel very fortunate that I've had a great honor and opportunity to meet many of these peoples over the years and to get advice from them, to work alongside them. And now I'm taking it to the next level, and then hopefully these folks who are coming now, these younger folks, will take it once we're done over here, with our work. And that's how it goes. We have to keep picking up that baton, I guess, or keep passing that stick along and getting our leaders, some who haven't even been born yet, a spot, so that they have a spot to speak when they're ready.
Yeah. I mean, not only at our tribal levels, but also at the international levels, like what we're talking about at the UN. A thing that I just saw on Facebook within the last 2 or 3 days is that our illustrious United States government has asked Hawaii if they wanted to come under the classification of Indigenous Americans. Did you see anything on that?
Well, I mean, this is something that's been going on for a while, and there's a lot of mixed reviews amongst Native Hawaiians, especially those who are working towards sovereignty, and to really highlight the illegal takeover and annexation of Hawaii into the United States. So this is something that's coming up, this bill, and I think that started with Senator Akaka, and basically what would happen is that the Native Hawaiians would come under the same kind of act and jurisdictional relationship that Native Americans have in the United States. And there's some who are very opposed to that, and for a number of reasons, but I'm sure they would be better spokespersons than I am why. But this is what's going on, and I'm sure you are very aware of the pros and cons of that kind of federal relationship with the United States, and what that means, what its limitations are, and what you're giving up, and what you can gain also. And so it's a serious discussion for them, and let's see how that develops.
I know a little bit of the history from Hawaii of the people there because I have very close friends, and I know that Hawaii became a part of the United States because the last queen of Hawaii abdicated to save her people because the United States had threatened to come in, full war going ahead, and taking it over. So because of the love of her people, she abdicated from her throne to save her people. This wouldn't happen. And there's a very famous Hawaiian song, and I can't think of the name of it right now, that I found out was her song to her people when she advocated, and it's a very, I hate to say popular, it's very popular, but meaning that it's well known and it's like a traditional song for those people. And the first time I heard it, all these people started standing up, and I just got goosebumps all over me because as an indigenous person, you sense these things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, is this an honor song or what? And yet I kind of recognized the tune. Of course, I didn't know the words, but I recognized the tune. And so I understand where these people are coming from. A lot of the people there, just like here, have a good sense of the history and the knowledge of the history and the traditions and the culture. And there's a lot of people that are objecting to come under the same title as Indigenous Americans because they want their own sovereignty, is the way I understand it. And I think in a way that's good. I kind of go along with that because, again, I think that they got a dirty deal, even more so than what we did. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Oh yeah, it certainly is, and again, I'm sure there's a whole lot of diverse voices on this, and very passionate voices about what they feel should be the next steps in this process. And I just wish them all well, and this is not easy,
No, it's not. And like you had stated before, it's the issues that are being addressed at the UN level. It takes somebody with perseverance because things just don't happen in a quick mode. It's like, and I find this is one of the things our people, as indigenous people here, sometimes have a hard time with because we decide that we want to have something done, but we're not good as a whole with long-term working on it. We want to see results as quick as we can, and this is one thing that our people really need to learn to do is, stay in and keep working for the long-term haul. And that's just one of my personal observations, and this is at any level, and even at tribal level.
Oh, yeah. I agree. I mean, you have to be in it for the long term. Look at the long fight that we had to get the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples adopted. And, if you look at the climate now and the way governments are and who's been speaking out against us, I don't even know if the Declaration would have passed in this climate that we have right now.
Oh, let me tell you, I was just talking about that while you were coming back on, and I've got the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And I was telling our listening audience while you were coming on that when I was in Aotearoa, or in English, New Zealand, I saw the same thing over there, but it was also in English and in Maori.
Right.
And so this is one of the accomplishments that of all the hard work our indigenous peoples have been doing, with the UN. And I know there's a lot of our people here that say, why are we talking with that United States government and the international government? They've always treated us wrong. And, and you can go into a whole line of, tribal history and things, about our treaties not being recognized or never honored and things like that. But I agree with you. At least we're there. At least we're making ourselves heard. And I just found an album by you. It was with my Indigenous Peoples Voice. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's timely. And it's very important that we're there because we're making ourselves known. We are building up the credibility, for the long haul on all issues, and especially where people are treated with respect, and above that as human beings, because for a long time we were considered to be, less than human.
Yes.
And to think that we've come this far, we have to stick with it. And I know that
I agree.
And I think one thing that you probably recognized, especially when we were there in May, our people really have to learn this word that it used to be with us all the time. It's called unity. Especially the American Indian caucus. Because unless we can work together within our own tribe, we're not going to be able to work together with other tribes. And this is where our strengths have to be. We have to. This is one of the reasons we started our organization, Two Feathers International Consultancy, and that's to teach decolonization, to unteach all of the things that colonization has put onto our people, and help them to get back to thinking more indigenous, where they are there as an individual, within their family, within their clan, within their tribes, within their nation. And this is in an attempt to maintain culture, tradition, and especially language. And once we can do that, then we can start working together intertribally as a nation. But we've got to get these non-indigenous ways of thinking, out of our heads. And is it going to happen overnight? No.
No. We've got to decolonize our minds.
Now, I'm going to do a plug for you right now, and it just popped up out of my desk, and it says Dance of the Mountain People, Indigenous Taino Music, and I'm going to slaughter the Spanish now, unless this is also Taino. It says El Baile del Jibaro, Música Indígena Taína by Roberto, Mukaro, Borrero. How did I do with that?
Yeah, that's an album I recorded. Actually, that was the very first full-length album recorded, Taino music recorded in probably since ever, right? It was the first one that was put out all Taino music, Taino words, Taino instruments. I went throughout Boreking and recorded the sounds of the ocean, the sounds of the forest, and added all that into the music so that people could really get connected in that way to our island and to our ancestral melodies and beats. And so that I actually recorded that album in 1994, Washu.
My God, I wasn't even born then. Don't I wish?
Gee, I was just a baby.
Yeah, so 1994, I recorded that one, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's still going pretty strong. People are still picking it up, and we play the music. The music is played around amongst the people, and they're trying to push me to do another one. But when you take on one aspect, sometimes some of these other things go. But I'm getting to the point where hopefully I'll be getting back in the studio again and doing some songs for the people once more, and coming out with a new album, hopefully before the end of next year.
I have a question for you, Roberto. When you go back to Boreking or Puerto Rico, do you have Taino communities, or are the people kind of dispersed here, like we are when we're not on a res per se? Jeez, man, you look really young here too. You look really young here too. I opened it up.
Oh yeah. That's when I was young and handsome.
Hey, we're still handsome no matter how old we get. Don't forget that.
Well, you know, Boriking itself, Puerto Rico is in my view, it's like one big res, right? Because it was taken over, and much in the same way that reservations were developed, by the War Department in the beginning, and then as it developed and as it became what it was. Though our people are still living in their ancestral land, so that whole island was our territory, and beyond that, the islands around it, and all the way into the southern tip of Florida was where we also had a Taino community that lived near the Calusas at a point in time. But in Boriking, as we're talking about, we have our people dispersed all throughout the island. There's some areas that you'll go to that you'll certainly see more Tainos than in other areas, in the rural areas, in the mountain areas. That when the U.S. did the last census, probably the most people who signed in and acknowledged themselves and wrote themselves back into history that way, probably were even around the San Juan area, which is the metropolitan area. Doesn't seem like too much of a stretch, because where are the jobs, You have to go where the jobs are, so that's where a lot of our folks are. Just like New York, right? New York has the largest urban Native American Indian population in the United States. And, if you're walking around, according to the census,
Yeah, I think the second largest is Chicago.
Yeah, so if you're walking around those cities, you might not think that you're passing Native peoples every day, right? But, people are there. Why do they come to these cities? Because, are things really happening in our own communities? And this is the reality of life in these days. So, I'll go into Puerto Rico, and I'll go to areas where there are more of our folks, that have festivals and things like that. But there's no reservation happening in that area. It's really the whole island is our ancestral homeland, and that's where we are. I mean, now we're working on trying to develop a better relationship with the state government that's there on various issues. Of course, it's a long, arduous process, just like as you can imagine. These were the very first colonial experiments in the hemisphere, starting with Columbus. And, we're still suffering the effects of that. Some people say, our people are fighting 500 years, but really for us, it has been for over 500 years, right?
I know, and they don't realize that, though for indigenous people, the conditions are still basically the same. It's not like the other people that migrated there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And these are the things that we're talking about, and why, again, we have to be at the international, we have to be at the national, we have to be at the local, and that's what's happening. So, there are some good young folks coming. Huh?
I've never asked you this before, but I'm just curious. Here on Turtle Island, we have this blood quantum thing that has another device the government brought up to divide and conquer our people. Is there anything like the blood quantum amongst your people on Boriking?
Well, I mean, we're not a federally recognized tribe, so we don't really deal with that. Amongst our own people, that whole idea of blood quantum was not an idea of our own. That's kind of how much are you of this or that. It really came from the imposition of the colonists and the government, exactly. Right, to set their norms, because even back then, in those very early days, that very early encounter with Columbus, our people could adopt either a European Spaniard into the community or an African, right? Could have been adopted in the community, and as long as they learned the language and accepted the culture, they could have become one of the people just like everybody else. So it really wasn't a thing of color and blood. It was really about, what people were going to to do to help the community succeed, which is why, our people were very open to Columbus in the very early days. We didn't know all the trickery that was going to come right in the beginning. We saw that,
right.
Our people took how many months to do a stone axe, and here comes another person with a metal axe, that could do the job twice as fast and say, hey, these guys are somebody we want to trade with, And that's how that whole development started. He didn't just start wiping people out right away. There was a little bit of, hey, let's get comfortable with these guys and let's establish some relationships, and then the hammer came down, right? And our people were, we really, Mashu, we really were about diplomatic relations, talking our ways and keeping words, right? And these were not things that those folks who came over were really into, right? Now you said it yourself, right? How many treaties have actually, been upheld over all these years?
None.
And for Native peoples, our word is so important. When you say you're going to do something in a Native, at least that's the way as a Taino I understand it. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, that's really looked down upon, in a way that's almost unheard of. You really have to complete your word and be on that level. And really, that's who they thought they were dealing with, other human beings in that respect. That okay, well, you're going to make this deal, right? The same way with the Iroquois and the two-row wampum, right? Those folks in their canoe, right? Those folks in their canoe, our folks in our canoe, and they would go along, as equals along that river of life. But we saw it that way. But if on the other side, they saw it as a way to manipulate and to gain and to get a foothold, so then they can really then launch their offenses and their defenses and their really military operations, right, against our peoples to take over our resources. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And
Roberto?
Yes.
It's our break time, and is it possible for you to stay with us a little longer after break?
I would really love to, but I can't. I have some other things going on, and I had until 10 this evening, but I really have to get to my other responsibilities tonight before the end of the evening.
Well, as much as I hate to see you go, I know you are a very busy man, and when I grow up, I want to be just like you, okay? Boy, have I got my work cut out for me.
Oh, my goodness.
That you do, Marshall.
Well, Roberto, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time that you have to speak with us, and I look forward to seeing you in New York in September.
Yes.
And we're going to take a break now, and we'll return in about 5 minutes. And again, thank you so much, Roberto.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure and an honor, and I look forward to the next time we can chat again. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer.
Hey, you're welcome to be a guest on our show anytime.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Doneda.
Good night.
Doneda.
Doneda. Thank you, twodog.
Join us on Just Us Radio Network for our shows Enflowment, Unity in Community, Numbers in Time, the Indigenous Peoples Voice, One Point of View, Walking the Talk with Kurt, and the People's Round Table. Check out our website for information about upcoming shows. Just ask Google to find Just Us Radio Network, and you will find links to our website and to our Blog Talk and Facebook pages, as well as to our podcast, where you can subscribe for automatic downloads.
Welcome back. This is Mashu Whitefeather. My co-host this evening is Charles Twodog, my cousin, also Cherokee. Doreen isn't here for our program this week, so I have no idea what the break music was. I know it was probably Maori. We had our first hour a very interesting guest, Roberto Borrero, Taino, and he's been with us before on our program, and he was a great guest. He's always a great guest, always so full of information. The last thing I was talking about with him before the break was if the Taino people had this blood quantum thing that our people are stuck with on Turtle Island here. And we ran out of time, but I was going to let him know that they tried that with the Maori people in New Zealand. They put it on their census, and they wanted the people to put down their if they were Maori, their blood quantum, and the people said, "To heck with this, we're not having any part of it," and they refused to fill it out. So they haven't dealt with it, and most countries haven't. But it was a government ploy to get access to all of our lands here on Turtle Island, and so they came up with this blood quantum. So they figured after a couple of generations, there wouldn't be any of our indigenous people left, and they would have, full rights to the land. And the biggest and the saddest part about that is that our people have bought into that so much that here on Turtle Island, we have indigenous people looking at other indigenous people and saying, well, I'm more indigenous than you are. And I don't know of any other race of people that does that except for our indigenous people here on Turtle Island. And that was one of the big things that in today's world separates us. Before we go any further, I would like to once again give you our call-in number should there be any questions. And that is area code 718-506-1564. Again, that's area code 718-506-1564. Or you can message in to our website, which is Just Us Radio Network. And Chimmy Bennett is in the background there, and he'll be able to let us know that you want to ask us a question, or if you call in on that number, he'll let us know, and we will take care of it that way. So do you have anything to comment about our last guest and what we were talking about, Twodog?
Well, I sat with the Taino gentleman about, a month ago, and this gentleman didn't have an idea about his own culture, but I wanted to be as quiet and polite to Roberto as I could be, because man, he had more information that needed to get out like this, and what I was seeing out of him, he's trying to walk one mind, one heart, one spirit with all indigenous people around the world, and that's what's needed.
Yes, and one of the things that I noticed being at the United Nations with him and all these other indigenous people is that our histories are exactly the same. We've all had the same experience with colonization, and what's been done to our people, it's identical. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. The non-indigenous people that came and tried to conquer gave each of us the same treatment. And so we have a lot of in that way.
Right, Mashu, and we still have around the world with the Maori and everyone else is the water rights and the land rights and language rights, everything.
That's even more prevalent today with what's going on with our Earth. As far as climate change, the oil pipelines, the fracking, the tar sands, because that's just compounding the problems that already exist with this so-called quote-unquote modern civilization and the greed
GMOs.
and the greed of the governments to just think of profits as opposed to future generations having a place to live. And this is the main two things. I mean, the main thing between our two cultures that's really prevalent in today's world. There are I think it's 6 corporations that basically own all the governments of the world, and these corporations are not interested in anything but profits, and it's fueled by greed. Whereas indigenous peoples, on the other hand, look at the earth as something for our future generations, and traditionally we always look 7 generations ahead, and we try to leave the earth in a better place than what we came into it. And
well, Mashu, what I'm doing right now is I'm just borrowing this land from my daughter and 7 generations up from that. That's what we're doing.
And that's exactly what we're doing. We are borrowing it from them. But in the process of this borrowing, we have a stewardship to this land to make sure that it's better than the way we found it.
Definitely.
For the next generation. And the thing is, with the beginning of Idle No More in Kanakota, or Canada, people became to be more aware of this. And this is what hopefully has brought more world attention to what's going on. And because of that, we have a lot of non-indigenous people that are now supporting us as well, because in the beginning, and I'm sure I was in New Zealand at the time when all this came to light internationally, it was thought of as, well, these are Native people just fighting for their rights again, and it's just Indian rights. Well, yes, it did start out as Indian rights because there was just a blanket paper genocide in Canada. But the other thing is that in doing that, we're fighting for all humanity, because with no water, there is no life. And just today on Facebook, I saw where the Atlantic current no longer exists. And that's changing the world. That's changing the world in a massive way. And
well,
with no one seems to care.
Right. And the basic deal with what I'm doing with, I'm also, I'm Eastern Band Salagi, but I'm also a Haudenosaunee out of New York. I'm a Mohawk out of New York, but I work with the Canadian people, also, the Canadian Mohawk, the Cree, and other nations over there. And the problem is Harper's saying, okay, you're not Mohawk, you're not Anishinaabe, you're not Cree, you're all Canadian, and you'll listen to me.
And he's doing that so he can have full rights to all the resources.
Exactly. He's trying to kill, the water over there. The water rights are just gone completely out of whack. He's not listening to the nations, the 6 nations that are there, or anything else.
This is where the world opinion is weighing in, and I'm surprised nothing has been done to this point. It's because these people had treaties with the Crown, and with these treaties,
yes, they did.
With these treaties, they have treaty land that the government has no right, or actually legal say, overtaking. They have water rights, they have natural resource rights, and what Harper has tried to do is to get all this land with one clean sweep of a pen, saying that there are no more indigenous peoples, and they're called Aborigine in Canada. And that just doesn't float. And the thing is, I don't understand in this whole mess how they're getting away with it. With the world looking at them and seeing what they're doing, I don't understand how that's even possible.
I can tell you a little bit, Mashu, of pretty much what his representatives are talking about too. There's a elder basically Canadian man, but he has a French last name. He works with Harper, and he said that the problem is the Mohawks they block roads throughout, and the only way to handle our Indian problem is we must go to the women. Well, I understand what he's saying there, and you're not going to go through our women. We're going to stand up for them because they're the life givers of all people. There wouldn't be a nation on this earth without the woman.
And with our Iroquois people,
you see where I'm going.
Yes, and with our Iroquois people, we are a matrilineal society, and everything does go through the women. Yeah.
So basically what they're saying is every time we want to do something, the Indian gets in the way. Well, basically within the treaty, okay, and the Tulo Wampum, if you look at this situation, the government of Canada cannot do anything with any part of the earth there without setting with First Nations first. They have to get that permission.
Right.
And they're not doing it. So, a lot of people call him the Adolf Harper right now. They remind them of Hitler. And as far as the RCMP being the SS of Canada with what they're doing to First Nations women over there.
Right. We have that going on here in this country as well, but I don't think to the extent that it's going on in Canada. A lot of the women are being murdered, are disappearing. Even young children are disappearing,
right.
And I think it's been proven that they're being sold to other countries and even into the slave trade, into the sex trade.
Yes,
and
right through America.
Right through American ships.
Yeah, and American ships.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look at it this way also, Matthew. We did a report, Tracy Kennedy and I did a report over where the soccer championships were being done, where they sold a child for $2.
Over in Brazil? Are you talking about the World Cup?
They sold a child over there for $2.
I didn't have anything to do with watching that World Cup because the street kids, hundreds of street kids were murdered. Hundreds of people were forced out of their homes so they could prepare Brazil for the World Cup games. And the land that the stadium was built on for the World Cup was actually on land, indigenous land that was taken from the people prior to the game so they could build it. And that has never been settled. And one of the commercials, and I happened to see this on Facebook, they had this big gala grand opening, and one of the kids that were a part of that was actually holding up a sign about the indigenous people there, and he had the headdress on of the indigenous people there. And they caught it. The mass media caught it on film, and I thought that was really great. But when I saw the reports and the kids piled up in the streets, the street kids, there's a lot of street people over there, and they didn't want the rest of the world to see that, so they killed these kids, and these, drove hundreds of people from their homes so that the rest of the world couldn't see that. They wanted everything to be really nice and pristine, so they would get more tourist trade. But I didn't even have an interest in doing that. When you lose human lives over a stupid game, I have no desire to have anything to watch about it.
It wasn't the desire to watch the game or anything, because I didn't watch none of it. But you're selling a child for $2. How bad are you doing? That's just incredible, Mike.
Well, the thing that gets me is that things like this are still going on in today's day and age. Because I used to hear of things like this when I was younger, And I thought, oh, geez, that must have happened like 100 years ago or 200 years ago. It's still happening today, and that's what a lot of the backing for the reasons that we go to the UN and that we're
40 some odd years ago, you know what happened to me, but we ain't going to go through that. The thing about it is I think it was about a month ago that we lost another Cheyenne Arapaho man that was shot by the police, and then they handcuffed him and said, hey, it's procedure to go ahead and cuff a dead man, which I still ain't figuring that out completely. And we don't know if that's connected to Naomi Whitecrow or not, because that's from the same nation she was from. But the fact of the matter is, it's wrong.
It is wrong, and it's wrong for anybody to have to go through that. And this is one thing that I've noticed a lot within the last few months is that the police forces here in our country, and I've seen clips where it's the same in other countries, but you don't expect it to see it here, is where they're almost like SWAT teams now. I mean, there was a black man that stopped the fight in New York, and the police came after him and gave him a chokehold, and it killed him.
Killed a man. I saw that.
Yeah, and this is not the kind of police enforcement that we were brought up, at least I wasn't brought up with. We always felt safe when the police was around. We could, if we got lost, we'd go up and say, hey, how do we get to here, or anything like that. But now they're in full SWAT gear, and they have all these almost like tanks instead of police cars a lot of times. And, it's like, what's happening? This should be going the other way.
If you remember, his name, he's a Santee, but his name is John Trudell. And
I know
John Trudell spoke of a futuristic police state years ago. Well, that futuristic police state is now. I mean, in Canada right now, you got, we reported that the crime rate is going down, but they're making more prisons. And in prison, the indigenous population is growing.
That's the same almost all over the world. You take the indigenous populations as compared with other ethnic populations, and in the prisons especially, it's like 2 to 3 times higher than the other ethnic groups.
Right.
And a lot of it is just through acculturation. People not understanding culture, people coming from the res living in cities, and having to learn that. It's like, for a lot of people coming from reservations, it's like you're going into a different country. Maybe not so.
It is a different country. To us, it is.
Years ago. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
To us, it is a different country. You go into a city, it's a whole new jungle out there.
Well, I remember.
It's all concrete.
I remember when I lived in Chicago years ago, there was a certain part of town called the Uptown area, and Chicago had a population of 27,000 indigenous people, which was a cross-section of the tribes all across the country. Now, the government was going on to the reservations, which are nothing but glorified concentration camps, and they were telling people that if they left the reservations and moved to the cities, they could get better jobs and earn more money, and they could better take care of their families and things like this. So people left the reservations to come to the cities to work. Well, when they got to the city, and I'm talking primarily of Chicago right now, number one, they weren't educationally prepared, because a high school graduate of a reservation school was equivalent to probably about a 7th or 8th grader in the public school system. So that was against them. They didn't have the education. Then because they didn't have the education, they couldn't get a job. Then there was the racism, and that was really big. And then for those two reasons, they couldn't find a job. And they couldn't go back to the reservation because they would lose faith with their people. It's their honor. So then these people would get in with the wrong crowd, and they would start drinking, and they became alcohol dependent. And then it was nothing for us to walk or to drive through the uptown Ravenswood area, and we'd see our people drunk on the streets, and we'd say, geez, I mean,
I lived on.
People would even step over.
I lived on Halsted. I lived on Halsted and Racine in Chicago back in the early '80s, and I seen the same thing.
Yeah, but the thing is that people
outside
would
of
step
Chicago,
over these indigenous people that were drunk on the street. They would step over them, and then they'd look at a white man that was in the same ditch, just as drunk, and they say, "Oh, isn't that cute? He's drunk." But they'd look at the Indian and go, "Oh, another drunken Indian," and they're in the same gutter.
Yeah, they'd say that
for the same reason, and things like that. But but things have gotten better since then. Not to a whole lot of degree, especially in the urban situation. And the other thing is that when natives that did come to the city and were able to make it, they were earning good, and then they would sometimes lose touch with their roots and stuff back on the res or back from their indigenous community. And this is where the term urban Indian came from. And I remember I went to a medicine lodge up in Wisconsin, it was a 4-day ceremony, and that whole service is called the medicine lodge. And I heard myself being referred to as an urban Indian, and I had no idea what that meant. So I went and I asked my wife. I said, "What's an urban Indian? They're calling us urban Indians." She says, "That's because we live in the city." I said, "Oh, geez, I thought it was a different kind of tribe or something, And well, I'd never heard the term before, and so these are some other things that our people have had to deal with. It's like you go with good intentions, and that was another ploy to get from the government to get our people off the res, and that kind of backfired because our people couldn't make it. A lot of times, and that's because there's such a vast difference between a res high school graduate and a public school high school graduate. Nowadays, things have improved on the education part, and we even have colleges working with our tribal schools, or our reservation schools especially, like in programs to where our own people can do better out in the rest of the world. But I think it's a lot harder for our indigenous people, because what most people don't realize is that an indigenous person always lives in two different worlds. We have our traditional that we will not give up, and then we're forced to learn how to live in a non-indigenous world. And it takes a strong person to do that. And I know throughout my life, I've tried to be a role model. Now, whether I was a good one or not still remains the question. But I tried to show the younger kids that I can survive in a non-indigenous world, because I was a healthcare professional for 45 years. I worked Native education. I was a counselor for a college, and then I lecture. But even then, even working in the hospital, I always stressed traditional. I never forgot who I was. I always kept that with me. And it's to show the kids you can do it. It's not, it can be done. You don't have to give up a thing about being indigenous living in today's world.
No.
Hopefully
the thing that I've had to do, Mashu, is work. I've worked and lived, went to the other world, of course, but I've always kept my traditional value about me, of who and what I am, and how I walk on this earth, Mother, and my traditional value.
Right.
I've always kept that. And tried
but you
to
were
be
just a little more militant than I was.
Well, let me show you where this come into pass, Mashu. This come into pass, and I'll tell you, I'm not that warrior I used to be. I'm more of a spiritual person now than actually I was. But here's the point, and it goes right back to this: when you're in the second grade, in school, and you end up with a dent in your forehead where somebody threw a rock at you because they called you the red N-word, you get to thinking, wait a minute, maybe I'm going to have to fight through this. And then as I got older, and especially in the Wounded Knee 1973, when the American Indian movement took back over Wounded Knee.
Yeah.
I like Dennis and Russell and all of them. They put another fire under a little Indian here. That hey, we still got grandmothers starving to death on these reses. It's not right. So I grew up a little militant. Yeah, I had to. Because I hate to say it, but when you start hanging from a tree limb, you kind of think you better fight. Pardon my expression on that.
Yeah, but I think we were all more militant back in the day, and but that at that time, that's what was needed to bring what was going on. I know that I was there with AIM during that time in the 70s, and the thing that made me leave AIM was that when AIM began, the American Indian Movement, it was all for the rights of the people, and if the news media came in and covered it, well, that was just a plus. And then over the next few years, it started to go the other way. They were more there for the news coverage, and then if the rights of the people were taken care of, well, that was a plus too. And the only time I've really seen AIM really work well is when they actually worked with the medicine people of the tribal communities, because then there was an organization and things were being done in a good way. Because I think what I've learned is that you get a lot more accomplished when you can sit and actually have a productive dialogue with people. Not always, but usually as a rule, and you get more support, and you have the time to get them to understand your point of view. And I think that's more important, especially in today's world, where we see the rest of the world going crazy.
I've learned to be a little more diplomatic.
Right.
A lot more diplomatic than I used to be.
And that comes with age, the power to reason, I like to think.
Right. I'm a 55-year-old elder now, so I want to set a better example for the young warriors that are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there is a old Lakota proverb that says we're going to be known by the tracks we leave behind us. We all are.
Mm.
And it's how we walk this earth with our Creator, and help and getting back to that we us thing that we had tribally, instead of this me, my, and I thing they got going.
Right. Yeah, because
we learned that, they taught that to us in their boarding schools, residential schools, is to get away from the we and the us, and it's me, my, and I now.
What he's referring to is that with our indigenous communities and people, we never looked at ourselves as anything or singularly. But we was always referred to things as we, us, and ours, whereas non-indigenous communities are I, me, and mine. With
right, exactly.
And this is another thing that's a part of our decolonization program that we're trying to get together and teach here, and through our indigenous tribes, well, actually globally, is to get away from the nation's way of thinking.
I want to thank you very much, Ski, so much for what you and Doreen are doing with your consultancy, plus what you're doing on your show. It means a whole lot to all of us.
Well, thank you.
We want to say to
you. That we're doing. I'm saying thank you for Doreen as well, because that's our goal. Our Two Feathers International Consultancy actually started 4 years ago as a cultural exchange group between the Maori people and our Cherokee people, and over the last 4 years, it's grown to this, and so it just keeps progressing. So that tells us that there's a need for what we're doing.
I mean, look what you did for, say, my show with the Hard Drum, mine and Tracy show, when you went to Aotearoa and you helped as a roving reporter for me. I would have never met Doreen and the Māori people and the beautiful culture that they have. We did 3 months worth of fantastic shows that are still being played, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, we did it once a week for 3 months. We did 12 shows live with at different sites throughout New Zealand, talking to tribal elders and leaders in the communities and organizations about tradition and culture, and then also the current Maori rights and issues that were being dealt with at the time. And also, I don't know more because it was that trip that it hit the headlines of what was going on in Canada. So yeah, right. that was pretty good. And we had some excellent guests from there. Excellent guests.
Yes, you did. You had Carl on there.
The one good thing about Aotearoa, or New Zealand, is that their country is an island country that would probably about the size of Connecticut, I think. And it was much easier to reach people. I mean, it takes you like maybe about 10 hours to drive the whole length of the country, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And it was much easier to get people. Now, we come back to Turtle Island here, and our country is so vast. I mean, even with modern technology, it's sometimes hard to make the connection with people and time, to, let's say, like to get a guest for the show.
Believe me, it is.
Yeah. Well, you're in the business, too. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But fortunately, we've been able to do it, and we've had some great guests on our show here. So I'm very thankful, and we're trying to put out.
I'm very grateful to you, Cuz, and to Doreen for doing this and doing this show and going to the UN of Indigenous People, meeting our brothers and sisters all over the world. It's needed. It's needed for one mind, one heart, one spirit to walk together, because we're all in the same canoe.
Uh-huh. And even there, that gave us opportunity to meet people and to do shows with people from other parts of the world. While we were in New York,
yes.
Different indigenous views, So we're trying to take advantage of all this, and put out there, especially through modern technology today. And I'm referring to our radio shows on the air here. And
right.
This is the technology that's making this happen, because what we're covering and the people that we're talking to and the issues that we're talking about and trying to address, you do not hear on mainstream media. And so this was the need for this type of program.
That's one of the points, Marshu. The reason I'm saying this, okay, if you look at the show you was on with me Saturday and the Heart Drum I do Fridays, plus your show, we're bringing out these issues, my cuz, that mainstream media will not speak on.
Right.
They will, if it comes to American Indian or Canadian Indian, the world media will not speak on it. This is why I tell you I am so grateful to you, because you are allowing our brothers and sisters to have a voice that the world media will not let us do.
But the more I think about this, twodog, is that how much does mass media really cover? Even the people they reach. Here in the United States, it doesn't get past the United States because the rest of the world tells other stories. It could be the same subject, but it's a completely different slant than what our country has on it, number one.
Right.
Number two, with the technology that we're using for our broadcast and with simulcast and everything like that, we're reaching the whole world. And the whole world
Definitely.
is getting a view of what it's like to be indigenous on Turtle Island, a.k.a. the United States. So these are ideas and perceptions and history that they normally wouldn't get. And
you have to look at this one point, Mashu, just for a second. With the shows that we do, you and I do, you're exactly right about world media, all right? But when you did the shows with me in Aotearoa with the Māori people, there were people in the United States loving the Māori now because you did these shows with me and bringing the Māori traditions and values and culture across the waters to America, that ended up loving these shows that we're still playing because they still love them. And there was, I think, one show that you did with me and Doreen, 2 million, right?
Yeah, we had over 2 million listeners, I think it was.
Yeah. We had so many that our server crashed almost. So that tells you what's going on.
Well, we haven't got that many yet, but we're working on it with this show.
Well, you know what? Much love, honor, and respect to you and Doreen with your show, and I do know it's going to go. It's going to get there. If it ain't there, it's almost there.
I think it will as well.
Now, as far as a diplomat, let's go like this for a second. As far as a diplomat, cousin, you're a great diplomat. You certainly are. And as far as a diplomat of the Māori people, Doreen has said it with me at my house with you.
Mm-hmm.
As far as a diplomat, she's awesome. She's a great diplomat for the Māori people.
Well, I think with the both of us, we're trying to do what we think is best for our people, not only within our own communities, but also on the world scene. We're trying to make ourselves more visible as indigenous people and show what we can contribute, for today's world. And I hear a lot of people say, well, you can't live in the past, and a lot of people seem to think we always dwell in the past. Well, with our culture, we never want to forget our past, because that's what we're learning from, is the lessons from our past to deal with today's world situation and hopefully come up with solutions for the future, so that our people, actually no people, have to go through the things that we've had to endure in the past. And,
exactly.
We bring our ancestors with us no matter where we go and what we do. With that, we bring our history with us, because we still do what most people would call ancient ceremonies. We still have our own belief system, and those things aren't changing.
Right.
There are a lot of us who have been blessed not to fall under the Christian beliefs, and in saying that, I have nothing against the Christian belief itself, just the way it was used with our people. And you know,
right.
a lot of us still, you know, fight that because this is where the Christianity was even bigger than the government in dividing and conquering our people. And a lot of our people don't realize that today. So it's always an education process, not only with traditions and culture, but with what's going on in today's world, keeping our people apprised of what's going on, getting our people educated, but still keeping the frame of mind that we don't give up anything in our past in order to deal with the future and a better future for our people. And also ridding the world of a lot of the stereotypes about our people. So we try to deal with all of those subjects with a venue like our radio programs. And by the way, we carry ourselves in public, and we're on the international scene fighting for, you know, or helping to fight for our indigenous rights and issues, you know, on an international scene. So I know it's something that Doreen and I really are passionate about, and that we're trying to do in a good way for all of our indigenous people, not just our specific tribes.
Well, see, that is what is that is the reason I hold you and Doreen in much honor and much love and respect.
And the other thing is that using this show, you know, thanks to Sheila and Jerry, you know, our producers, we have an avenue now to bring on such quality guests like our guest tonight, Roberto Borrero. And you know,
he was great. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to talk.
Well, yeah, the man's experience is just awesome, you know. And of course, he knows much more about what's going on than what I do in certain areas. So it's really good to have informed people like that, you know, come in and, you know, enlighten us even more. So,
well, you know, if you have a guest like, you know, from the Taino, and me being Salagi, then he knows more about the Taino than I do. Plus, he knows about what's going on over there more than I do. And it's necessary for him to get this information out. So that's why I was just sitting back and letting y'all guys have at it.
Yeah, I was surprised at how big the Taino population is in New York. When we go to New York, we usually stay in Manhattan, and he lives over in the Bronx. We're on the island of Manhattan, right at the UN, and a lot of the people that were at the UN, their schedules were different than ours, and so they were able to take in a couple of the Taino festivities, you know, or their ceremonies and stuff, you know, which I personally didn't get to attend, but you know. What an education, you know, a hands-on feel and being with the people. I wish I had the money where I could actually go to all of these people's countries where I'm, you know, of the people I met, and actually firsthand see their cultures and how they're doing things and things like that. That's something I've always been interested in, and listening to their music and, you know, what makes these people different from every other group of people on the earth. You know, that's always been a fascination of mine.
Well, you know, it's like when you brought Doreen to my house and we sat together, and the music that was played by that young Māori individual, the music that he played was it was fascinating.
Are you talking about Jerome Kavanaugh, the flute player?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, it didn't do what else it did as far as the 3 months of shows we did over there, thank you, Mashu, was made the Māori and us, you know, feel more like family.
I think you'll find that with indigenous people, though. There's just something about indigenous people that we have that in us. And even Roberto was bringing that up about the adoptions and, you know, with his people. and things like that. I think that's a common thing, and it's been shown to me over and over again whenever I get with another indigenous person even from a completely different country. We are almost identical in those ways of perception.
Exactly. If you look at everything that's happened to indigenous people, Mushu,
right,
and to think that after all this time, almost 600 years here, we are still giving people. After all this turmoil and all this stuff that has happened to indigenous people, that we are still givers.
Geez, when are we going to learn? No. This is something I hope never changes about our people. I mean, we don't have to be stupid about it, but we've always been a very giving people, and I know with our people, we were always taught that the further people come from, the more we go out of our way to make them feel at home.
Yeah.
And that same teaching is the one main thing that got us into a lot of trouble, especially with European migration here, and
right.
that were later to become a part of our history. But still, those are very good qualities of a people. It's to show that our people have a heart, and that's what we live by. And I remember my grandfather always saying, the main difference between indigenous people and other peoples, as a rule, is that a native person thinks with their heart first, and then their brain kicks in second, whereas with most other people, generally, they think with their brain first, and if you're lucky, the heart kicks in second. And
if you're lucky.
Generalization, and this is things that have been noticed throughout history. But I think it's also important to note that we have many people today that are supporters of indigenous rights, and even more than that, because of these indigenous rights, are helping us and backing us save all of humanity, because we look at it from the viewpoint that we've always, for the last 600 years anyway, have been on reservations, that we've had maltreatment. Nothing has been honored with the bigger governments. Our governments were never recognized because of this idiotic thing of manifest destiny. And,
right.
But today, the whole world is being treated like that. The whole world is getting that type of treatment that our indigenous people have been dealing with for 600 years or more, especially here on Turtle Island. And so they've gotten a taste of that. And because of that, and because they are also seeing now our connection with the earth, and that this is our only place, for us to live. And if things are destroyed, especially the water goes, we're gone. And all the water.
Well, see, that's the point.
Now. This is one of the main.
The circle of life in the water. If the water's gone, you're done.
Yep. And this is what's unifying us all as a human race, all except for the corporations that are seeing nothing but greed. And I think if enough people unified worldwide, look at all the countries. There's 37 countries that have actually banned Monsanto.
Exactly. America hasn't.
And I think about the same number of countries have banned fracking. Now, I know the latest one I've heard is New York, where the New York state government has given each individual township and town and cities the right to ban fracking and stuff like that, and pipeline, and even the pipeline is being put on hold right now, that
right.
It's supposed to be going through treaty land, because all of these things are destroying our water supply. It's killing what's in the water. It's killing the animals that come to the water. It's killing the vegetation around the water. The tar sands, the fracking is polluting all the water that's being dumped into these rivers. It's killing the land. There's nothing growing there. They're finding animals with blisters and sores all over their bodies. Fish are bleeding from the gills. There's your food supply. there's your food chain. You know, when that's gone, people starve. People starve, there's no more population, and it's all on the water. And I look at these people that are still trying to push that through, and I'm going, why don't these people have a brain? You know,
well, it's like they think they're the ones that's going to live through this.
Excuse me?
It's like they believe they're the ones that are going to live through this, and I just don't get it with them.
No. I think what it is that it's not affecting a lot of people in their own personal lives, like say maybe the people that live in the big cities or in the nice communities. Mm-hmm. So they're not the ones out there that are dealing with it firsthand, and so it's not in their realm of reality. But it's getting there, and they're starting to feel the effects, you know, of what's going on. It's like Toledo, Ohio. Up until today, I had to use bottled water because of stuff that was in their water. It was flowing down.
Yeah, Lake Erie went bad.
Yeah. Well,
Lake Erie went bad.
Yeah. And then the algae, it affected the algae, and that made the stuff in the water poisonous.
Exactly.
It's almost time for us to leave the air, twodog. I would like to thank you so much for being a part of the show and helping us tonight. And hopefully Doreen will be back next Monday. Do you have any closing words for us?
The only thing I could say to the world is to look to your brothers and sisters, open your heart, look at everything you're doing here, stand for each other, and may we just think of the human race for once and have love, honor, and respect for everything that flies, walks, and crawls. It is our relation. Mashu.
Aho. Thank you again. We will return next Monday, and thanks to everyone for listening. Good night.